Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? So on Saturday, the thing that we all knew was going to happen happened, and reports came that the Saints are, in fact, going to restructure Derek Carr's contract. If you're not familiar with how that works, they effectively take salary, convert it to a signing bonus, so it lowers the cap hit this year, but that signing bonus money gets spread out into future years of the contract, so you just take the cap hit in future years instead of this year. So in restructuring Derek Carr's contract, it saved the Saints almost $31 million, just a hair under $31 million immediately. So it puts you in a much better spot financially to where all that money you were over the cap, well, now you're in better standing. But the downside is it kicks money into future years. And again, we all sort of anticipated this was going to happen, especially with the comments Mickey Loomis made at the Combine that they were planning to move forward with Derek Carr and they thought they could win with him. Well, on Monday, Kellen Moore and the new Saints staff had media availability. It was informal, but all the Saints media was invited to come and meet the entire coaching staff. And Kellen Moore, this was courtesy of our buddy Sean Fazand. Kellen Moore effectively said that this was going to be the plan whenever he became the Saints coach.
Yeah, certainly you take this job with the intentions of some of the top players being here, and we felt very comfortable with them. Obviously, anytime you go through these things, it's great to connect first as people and build those relationships and go from there. And so, I'm really, really excited to work with him.
So he effectively said he took the job knowing Carr was going to be the quarterback. He also, Kellen Moore, again, this is courtesy of Sean Fazand at Fox 8, about the conversations that he's had with Derek Carr since becoming the head coach.
Yeah, we just talked about our obviously confidence in this situation and the ability for him to have success here. I think we got a great group here, from the players, the coaching staff, to the environment that we're going to be able to create for him. Felt really, really good and comfortable with what we're going to be able to provide.
Now, I'm not calling Kellen Moore a liar, but I don't believe him. I believe sometimes you tell half-truths. And if you believe Catherine Terrell's reporting from this weekend, and I do, Derek Carr was open to hitting the market. But for New Orleans, there wasn't a situation where that made sense because of the contract. If you had let Derek Carr walk, you would have eaten a massive dead cap number this year. You would have not been able to get the cap relief you needed. So even if you wanted to let Derek Carr go test the market, financially, it wasn't prudent to do it. So why did Derek Carr agree to a restructure? He didn't. The way that his contract was drawn, the Saints had a team right to exercise a contract restructure, which they took. They did it without Derek Carr having to approve it. So I promise, I'm not going to sit here and yell. I promise. I'm going to keep my calm. Y'all have heard me yell enough. You know how I feel about it. But every time I've talked about Derek Carr, there's been one consistent bit of pushback I get. Now, I think overwhelmingly you all agree with me. Overwhelmingly. Like, if I had to guess, just guess, from the tweets and the texts and the DMs and all the feedback I get from you, I would guess 80-85% of you agree with me. 80-85% of Saints fans are fed up with Derek Carr. They hate the contract. They're tired of Mickey Loomis. They want to move on. They want to move on to what's next. But there's still that lingering 15% of you. The consistent thing I hear from you is, why can't you see Derek Carr isn't the Saints' biggest problem? Okay. I have, not now, nor ever have I said that Derek Carr is the Saints' biggest problem. What I have said consistently, and the great thing about the internet, every damn thing is recorded. Y'all can go check my facts. Anybody find any video of me saying Derek Carr is the Saints' biggest problem? I'll eat my words. I'll apologize. But I know what I've said because I've said the same thing for more than 2 years now. What I've said is that Derek Carr has a lower ceiling but a higher floor. He's a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. He's just a lower mid-tier, upper bottom tier starting quarterback in the NFL. He's not your biggest problem. You got bigger issues on your team. I've even said Derek Carr is the best quarterback option you have. You want to win now, he is the best option you have to win. However, with a lower ceiling, he's never going to get you to win at the highest level, especially when you can't build a roster around him, and therein lies the rub, my friends. It's not that Derek Carr is your biggest problem. It's that Derek Carr's contract, relative to his value, is your biggest problem. Let's look at this now. With this contract restructure, the New Orleans Saints have lowered Derek Carr's cap hit in 2025 to $20 million. His dead cap number this year is $78 million. So he's going to be your quarterback this year, period. If you got rid of him at any point now, $78 million against the cap. That ain't going to happen, all right? So he's going to be your quarterback. There's a weird scenario that could unfold where you trade him post-June 1, which lets you take a lower dead number this year, but I don't think that's going to happen. It would take a wild scenario, but cross that bridge if you get there. I'd give that a 5% likelihood. Okay. Now, next year, because of this restructure, Derek Carr's cap number next year is $69 million. That's what it'll cost the New Orleans Saints in 2026 if Derek Carr's on the roster. Okay, well, what's the big deal, Matt? Let him go next year. Okay. Let him go next year. Let him go next year, and the dead cap number next year is $59.6 million. It will cost you $60 million for Derek Carr not to be on your roster next year. And oh, by the way, because you've done this cockamamie restructure twice now, the dead cap number in 2027 is $40 million. Derek Carr at $20 million counts for 7% of your cap. That's perfectly agreeable. But next year, whether he's on your roster or not, he's going to count more than $20 million against your cap. Imagine having a player. I said I wasn't going to yell. My bad. I'm just making my point. Imagine having a player not on your team counting $20 million against your cap. That's the problem. You don't have enough cap space to go build a roster around Derek Carr to allow him to compete. If you took Derek Carr, what's the best roster in the NFL? The Eagles, can we agree? Let's just say the Eagles are the best roster in the NFL. If you put Derek Carr on the Eagles roster, that's a playoff team. They're still a playoff team. I don't know that they win a Super Bowl because I don't think he's good enough to do that. But they're still a playoff team. Great roster with Derek Carr. But can Derek Carr elevate a team to make the playoffs and to win in the playoffs? I say absolutely not, because we've got 11 years of a sample size to show you that. So you got to build a roster around him. Well, Derek Carr next year, his cap number is going to be $60 million or 70, depending. The highest cap hit by a quarterback in 2024 was Dak Prescott at $60 million. Let's look at 2025. Let's look at this NFL season. All right. So Derek Carr, he took this restructure. So his cap number now has him all the way down at 20. Let's see. He's 16th. His cap number is it gets right about the middle to the bottom of the NFL. 2025, Dak Prescott, $60 million. Joe Burrow, $55 million. Jordan Love, $55 million. Josh Allen, $55 million. This is their cap hit. These quarterbacks' cap hits for the 2025 season. Trevor Lawrence, $55 million. Tua, $53.1. Goff, $53 million. Herbert, $52.5. Lamar, $52. Jalen, $51. Kyler Murray, $46.1. The point is, there's a lot of quarterbacks with a $50 million cap number. But it's Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. It's the best quarterbacks in the NFL. You can sink 20% of your cap number into those guys because they're good enough. When you're Derek Carr, you can't. That's the problem. That's what I've been yelling about for 2 years. No, Derek Carr is not your biggest problem. It's not the biggest weakness on your team. But when you're paying him like you have, you can't build a team around him to elevate him. That's your problem. That's going to continue to be your problem in 2025 and 2026 and 2027 because you continue to cripple your team's ability to build a competent roster around him to be able to compete. That's the problem. Is Derek Carr a better option this year than Spencer Rattler? Hell yeah. But even with Derek Carr, what is this team? A 7-win team? So what are you doing? Maybe they mess up and win 8. But that's the point I've been making now for 2 years, y'all. He's got a lower ceiling and a higher floor. He's not taking an average roster and elevating it. Joe Burrow got to a Super Bowl with me playing on the offensive line. He was obliterated, sacked more times than anybody ever. Gets to the Super Bowl. Why? Because he's amazing. Andy Reid was on something called The Better Angle. Andy Reid, pretty good coach, right? Keeps winning Super Bowls, getting back there, despite the fact that their quarterback is eating up $55 million against the cap, and they paid him a $500 million contract because you had to. And you keep seeing guys that are great members of that team leave. I mean, Tyreek Hill. You don't think Patrick Mahomes would love to still have Tyreek Hill hanging around? Kansas City just traded Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney has been a pretty good player in his career. Started 146 games, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler. He was starting center for the Patriots, won Super Bowls there. Starting center for the Chiefs, won Super Bowls there. Chiefs just traded him to Chicago. Andy Reid explained why.
He's like one of my favorite all-time guys that I've coached. He's just a good dude. I mean, just all around a good dude, and tough, dirty tough. He's going to do Chicago, just a heck of a job. I mean, he still can play. But the thing you got to do is you got to be able to manage this cap thing, and it's a nightmare that way. If you're not going to push a ton of money forward, then you got to manage the cap and try to keep consistent with this whole winning thing. And that's not an easy thing to manage. And sometimes you have to make these decisions, and it just kicks you right in the butt. They're tough ones.
Let me ask you a question. You got to manage this cap unless you want to just keep pushing money forward. You got to make tough decisions. Let me ask you a question. Let's poll the room. Who's done a better job managing the cap and building their roster? The Chiefs or the Saints? Muse, who do you think's done a better job?
The Kansas City Chiefs.
Hater. Paulie, who do you think's done a better job managing their roster? The Chiefs or the Saints?
I'll say the Chiefs.
Well, you're going to have to take that fleur-de-lis off the back glass of your truck. What are we talking about? One of the greatest dynasties in the history of the NFL, the head coach is telling you. We just traded away an all-pro center. Why? Because you got to manage the cap. I mean, you could just kick money into the future, but if you really want to manage the cap, you got to make tough decisions. This is the problem. You can't build a roster capable of competing when you keep doing this, because too much of your salary is tied up in players that don't play for you anymore or are named Derek Carr and have a low ceiling. If I needed to tie up a quarter of my salary cap into Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. I'd do it in an instant. And if that meant trading away an all-pro center, you do it. Because you have to. And you got to be good at scouting and drafting and finding value so you can build your roster around your all-everything quarterback. But when you do a terrible job of managing your cap, like the New Orleans Saints, this is the problem. So I'll say it again to you. For those of you who just don't seem to understand it, comprehend it, or want to hear it. Again, I'm speaking to the minority here. I am not saying Derek Carr is the New Orleans Saints' biggest problem. What I am saying is Derek Carr, his contract relative to his value is your biggest problem. Because you have so much money tied up in a player that is mid, it cripples your ability to build a roster capable of competing. And now with this restructure, that's not going to change for at least 2 more years. So I'm done yelling. They've made their bed. They're going to lie in it. And I'm going to sit here. I'll talk about them on Sundays and Monday, whenever they come up, because we got to. And there's interest in the team. But if you have any expectation whatsoever, you need to check that at the door. Because this team is not competing for anything for at least 2 more years. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.